2024 was a great year for music. I mean, absolute bangers. I feel like in some way, everybody kind of got what they wanted in 2024. No matter what kind of music you're into, everybody got some kind of little treat. And if you're someone who likes to listen to as much of it as humanly possible, then you were probably a little bit overwhelmed at the sheer volume of great stuff. I'd take chances on artists I didn't know or only half liked before even hearing their releases this year and was blown away by the quality. I'm going to kind of run through a lot of the likes and dislikes, the honorable mentions really fast up front. But if you want to get straight to the top 15 list, click to this time right here. Let's kick it off with the new Knocked Loose album that came out this year. Usually, I'm not the biggest fan of Knocked Loose. I mean, I like them. I think they're fine. But this new one honestly does slap really hard. I mean, it's heavy as shit. And especially if you're taking this thing to the gym, it's really going to get you going. The only negatives I'd say about this album, the snare kind of sounds bad for some reason. I don't know why it sounds like that. And I think their vocalist is kind of goofy. They could maybe stand to get a new vocalist. Fontaine's DC Romance. I didn't get the hype with this one at all. I like some of the older Fontaine's DC, but this one just sounds really bland. I don't know, not for me. Idols came out with a new album this year that is way more experimental than their usual business, but I'm not sure how much I liked it in this case. It's okay. The new Cheek Face record is a lot of fun. I think the vocalist sounds a lot like Weird Al Yankovic, and I don't have a problem with that at all. Violet Pony was an artist I'd never listened to before until I found this thing one day, and I definitely didn't listen to it strictly because of the album cover. Then we have the best sludge metal album that came out this year. No, not that. No. Thou. The new Thou album is nasty as hell. Holy shit. It's a lot of fun to listen to. I highly recommend this one. If you like Chat Pile, and that's totally cool if you do, but you want something that's like way heavier and way nastier, give this Thou album a listen. The new Poppy was all right. It was kind of mid, honestly. I think it was a little too clean sounding. I really liked I Disagree from 2020, and I had high hopes for this, but yeah, it was just all right. The new Opeth album showed a lot of promise this year with the lead single having a return to the growling vocals, but in reality, it's actually on a pretty small portion of the record, and it kind of plays out like most of the recent Opeth stuff, sounding like prog worship, but in a kind of boring way where it goes in one ear and out the other. I don't know. I did not vibe with this record at all. Sabrina Carpenter, short and sweet. It is. Haley Hendrix, Seed of a Seed. I listened to this album on streaming a little bit, but I actually got to see her live this year, and she performed this album in its full entirety. So in a way, this is kind of like the best album of the year because I got to hear it live. But Tyler, the Creator's Chromacopia came out, and it was really good. I just think he set such a high standard for himself from Flower Boy to now that he really has to knock it out of the park to exceed my expectations that I have for him at this point. So it's still really good by most standards. It's just maybe not my favorite Tyler record. A Denzel Curry, King of the Mischievous South, Volume 2. I really appreciate this record because Denzel sounds like he's having a lot of fun paying tribute to a certain kind of hip hop that's very important to him. Just not really my bag. I definitely fall into more with the conscious stuff that Denzel does, but I'm definitely still a solid fan, and I can't wait to see what he does next. Cage the Elephant dropped a new album. I've never really been a big fan of theirs, but I got to go and see them live this year. They were really great, really impressed me. It kind of raised my opinion of their new album as well. And it's got some bops. It's a total vibe, not going to lie. That thing happened with that Green album that everybody knows and loves. It's there. It's here. It's good. It's fine. Castle Rat. This is a band I came across this year. Look at how the band dresses. Now listen to this. Now you know you're going to have a good time. Go listen to this album. NSP and Twerp respectively dropped new albums this year, and I thought they were both really good. NSP really doesn't have any misses in my book. Judas Priest dropping Invincible Shield this year. Sounds like 1990 was yesterday in their opinion. Maybe doesn't go as hard as Firepower from a few years ago, but it's still really great. I mean, for guys that are past retirement age especially, these guys are legends, and they keep proving it time and time again. Wine Lips, the new Wine Lips album is a hell of a lot of fun. It just makes you want to fucking crowd surf every time you listen to it. Cavalier Conspiracy is continuing their re-recording of classic Sepultura albums, which normally would be blasphemous in a lot of classic metal circles, because usually if some old metal album sounds like crap, it's kind of a perk, but they do it in such a respectful and kick-ass way that this and the last one that they did are amazing. Go listen to them. You'll like music. Death's Dynamic Shroud dropped a new one that was honestly a lot of fun. I liked it a good bit. Hiatus Coyote dropped a new album this year, and it's good. It's solid. I don't feel really strongly one way or the other, but it's pretty fun and dynamic for white people levels of dynamic, I guess. Oh yeah, Kendrick dropped this year. Do I need to say anything? Of course, it's really good. All right, now we're getting into the good, the big stuff, the top 15 albums of 2024. In my opinion, I feel like a lot of the best stuff came out in like the last quarter of the year, so I was just scrambling to give all my time to my favorite albums as much as I can, especially for making this video, which is why you're seeing this in February. Also, I'm going to make a playlist of one song from each of these albums to put on Spotify that I'll leave in the description, so you can go and get a little sampler platter of all my favorite stuff from this year and see if you might like some of it. But without further ado, the top 15 albums of 2024. Kicking off the list at number 15, one that came out all the way back in February, the new Brittany Howard album, What Now? It's a wonderful, wonderful neo-soul album. I mean, when it comes to newer soul records, I really like a good amount of groove and a good amount of funk in there, and Brittany Howard absolutely delivers on all fronts. Very eclectic taste in production because the vibes on this album are switching up constantly. The addition of the synthesizers give it such an earthy, delicious quality that I could throw this into like a Moog electronic playlist, some of the tracks on here, and it would not stick out at all. This one is such a great vibe. Give it a listen. Coming in at 14 is Tapir with The Pilgrim, Their God, and The King of My Decrepit Mountain. This one got recommended to me by a good buddy of mine, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, this is the encapsulation of an adventure of an album. It's a gorgeous journey of a folk album that would not be out of place as the soundtrack to a classic Sierra point-and-click adventure game. Like, this is King's Quest if it was a concept folk album. So many great hooks, so many great melodies, and the last song, The Mountain, has such an incredible build to it that it's an incredible finale. One of the best endings to any record that came out this year. Love it. Coming in at 13 is the new Godspeed You Black Emperor album. I've never been the biggest Godspeed fan, but this new album really has me hooked. So many great melodies that really build upon themselves, and it's such a epic album for being only 40 minutes long. I mean, they really condense all their grandeur of their post-rock style into such a nice package that just makes it so inviting to listen to again and again and again. They also hit some notes that are just very emotional, and overall it's a very breathtaking album experience to listen to. If you're not a big fan of post-rock or purely instrumental music, give this album a listen, because for 40 minutes of your time, it's certainly worth it. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. There's one genre that everybody was clamoring for this year. Everybody was begging for some more Brazilian prog. The Brazilian prog is what all the kids were asking for this year. And who would deliver on that other than this new Papangu album? I'm not going to try and say the album title, I'm sorry. They achieved one of the hardest things in the 2020s of making a prog album that's actually really fun and interesting to listen to. We got organ on here, my guy. We got metal growls on here, my guy. And by God, this thing slaps with some fantastic melodies and great riffs across the whole thing. This is a prog album that actually rocks. Do you like trees? Do you like camping by the lakeside? Do you like listening to whales and talking to fish? Then by God, get your ears filled with 2 hours of existential naturalistic bliss from our boy Mount Eerie. Phil Elverum is the indie folk darling. I mean, if you haven't listened to classic microphone stuff, please do yourself the favor of going and listening to his classics. And I'll be honest, Night Palace really doesn't fall short of the standard he set for himself 20 years ago. Now we're in the top 10. Let's go. Jack is back, baby, and he's blue as ever. Initially, when I heard this album, I wasn't super blown away because I've really been down with his more experimental edge that he's had in the past few records. I love Fear of the Dawn. It's one of my favorite albums from that year. So initially, I wasn't hooked by this record. As time went on and I came back to the singles over and over again, I mean, Old Scratch Blues, one of my most played songs this year, I realized I had to appreciate this album for what it is. It is a down and dirty blues rock album. I mean, this is like if you only took the fuzzed out bangers from OG White Stripes records and put it all into one package. The riffs come down like thunder, one after the other, and the energy level that this album maintains is like lightning. I could literally hear Old Scratch Blues like a million times and not get sick of it. Like, I can't stop playing that song. And then I just never get a breath after that song, so I just don't turn off the album. Coming in at number 9, we got the new Ulcerate album, Cutting the Throat of God. Few metal bands ever can really pride themselves on the high level of mindfuckery that Ulcerate delivers on with every album, and this new record is absolutely no exception. Holy hell, the brain-bending songs that these guys are able to perform on here are akin to getting bludgeoned with a sledgehammer while you're tumbling through a wormhole. What really sets this one apart from other Ulcerate albums for me is the heavier use of cleaner guitar tones. It really gives it a gothic and melancholic edge. It's the perfect blend. It's the perfect blend of gazing off the cliff into a gray, foggy infinity, and then falling off the edge and smashing your head on every spire on the way down. Also, probably the title that goes the hardest for any album that's come out this year. There's many great qualities that make hip-hop the very special and iconic genre that it is. The larger-than-life personalities, the bravado, the overall streak of coolness that runs through many of its figureheads. But there's a new quality to this new Joey Valence and Bray record that reminds me of an equally important quality of hip-hop that's been there since the very beginning. Fun. This album is a blast. The electric charisma of this duo is just too entertaining to pass up, plus the instrumentals absolutely go off. Not only is this album super entertaining and fun, but it's super creative and constantly shaking things up from track to track. I'll never get tired of the random as hell drum and bass break in the middle of Bust It or the sax sample that's on the title track. I'm not typically a fan of nerd rap. I think it can be kind of cringe sometimes, but this thing is pulled off so well that I dare anybody to give this album a listen and not have a good time. Coming in at number 7, we got the new Oranssi Pazuzu album, Munta Tuja. Don't quote me on that pronunciation. Oranssi Pazuzu are a kooky, crazy, scratch your head, poop your pants kind of band because you just never know what you're getting with one of their records. I love their 2021 record, Mystere and Kinsey, for how off the wall and avant it was, but I'm equally impressed with this new record because it sounds totally new again. You could very stringently call this album black metal because there's so many ingredients in this cake, you're going to break any pan that you try and fit this into. The use of electronic and industrial instrumentation across this album is just insane for how well incorporated that it is. I mean, this sounds like an evil-ass album that the bad guy from Cyberchase would be cooking up. One of my favorite qualities of this album in particular is how spooky it is. Metal has many flavors, but not all the genres strike on that horror movie-inspired element that the genre was birthed from. But goddamn, put this on any time and just wait for the chills to run down the spine. It's so fun. Also, not to mention the incredible drumming across this entire album. I mean, it's like a krautrocky jazz fusion mixed with metal that they create these repetitive drum beats that just bore their way into your skull and they're never going to find their way out. Just listen to the title track if you want to know exactly what I mean. Oranssi Pazuzu are one of the most exciting bands working today, and I am so fucking excited to see whatever they're cooking up next. Coming in at number 6 is the new Nails album, Every Bridge Burning. Nails are like that cool cousin that's from out of state that only comes around like once a year, but every time that you get to hang out with them again, they only get cooler. Like, this band went on hiatus for a full 8 years, comes back with an almost entirely different lineup, only to deliver us a brief, burning 18-minute record that shows that all that time must have been well spent. When you come back with an 18-minute album that is such pure, untouchable, metallic gold, you don't need to do it any more often than that, my guy. Because you'll get so much head bang for your buck from what they're bringing to the table that you're going to need to wear a neck brace for the next 8 years until they come back with their next 20 minutes of music. Every Bridge Burning, I would say, is my favorite Nails album to date, taking all the crushing great qualities of their previous records and cranking that up even more somehow. But this is no mere vulgar display of power, my friends. No, no, no. What really sets this apart from many other grindcore affairs is their innate ability to riff. There's so many amazing riffs packed into this tight package that if you're not snapping your neck actively, then you must be dead from snapping your neck on the previous song. The only reprieve you're given within this lightning grade onslaught is the few seconds of feedback that spares you before you're thrown right back into the grinder. I mean, this album is half the reason I didn't listen to the new Knock Loose album until like November, because every time I'd start that Knock Loose album, I'd wait for the riff-packed ass whooping, and then I'd look at the 28-minute runtime and I'd say, well, Nails can do it better, and they'll shave 10 minutes off their time. For grind geeks, pit freaks, and anybody who despises their neck vertebrae, listen to this album. Coming in at number 5, we got Jordy Griep with The New Sound. After the breakup of Black Midi, their lounge lizard of a lead singer, one Jordy Griep, hit the ground running and gave us no time to be sad for Black Midi, because he delivered us The New Sound. Now, perhaps one of the biggest selling points of this album that made it stand out from the flock in this year is the insane lyrics. These songs about male manipulators, delusional perverts, and deadbeats of high self-worth give a perspective seldom explored. If you've never heard a Steely Dan song before. Now, that's not a dig at this album, but these are such high levels of Danian character building that it would be a dead ringer if Donald Fagen more explicitly name-dropped pussy and cum. The incessant details about these deplorable but fascinating dudes is like the audio version of a Literally Me movie playing out between your ears. The instrumentation, while not as chaotic as something you'd get from a Black Midi album, is still no less dense or exciting. There's still a ton to chew on with all the fantastic performances from all the musicians across the board here. It's basically as prog as anything Griep has done before, but with the bossa nova meter cranked all the way to luxurious effects. This album is a blast to listen to every time, and the sheer density of lyrical messages and virtuoso playing on display here means that you're going to have a new favorite part every time you come back to this album. If I was on this new Peggy album, I'd be like Weird Al, but worse. Coming at number 4 is I Lay Down My Life For You by JPEG Mafia. Damn, Peggy, this shit goes hard as fuck. I mean, if it went any harder, he would just have to quit what he's doing and go join a hardcore punk band. But who needs the band? Because this man is cooking up tasty riffs all on his own. Yes, riffs on a JPEG Mafia album, I know. Plenty of this album hits on the classic style of Peggy production, which means it sounds nothing like anything else he's ever made. But then the use of guitar and the riffs on this album just give it a spin like nothing you've ever heard from him before. The use of guitar on here is sick as fuck, but it really escapes that rap rock definition because he's slightly manipulating it and changing it in these interesting ways that help it to escape definition altogether. Listening to this Peggy album gets me hyped as hell, just from the sheer amount of great little details like the bell on Don't Rely on Other Men and the grunts on Vulgar Display of Power. This is some shit to catch a felony to because you didn't realize you were going so fast and you end up leading the police in a high-speed chase. All the while I'm wildly flailing my body to this music and scratching my head at the same time saying to myself, who comes up with shit like this? This is seriously one of my most played albums of the year, and I doubt with the sundial change to 2025 that that's going to change at all. Hey, do you want to hear some future music? Then might I recommend to you the hottest to trottest pop album that's come out this year. That's right, I'm talking about the new 2024 Magdalena Bay album, Imaginal Disc. To anyone else who's religiously listening to their 2021 album might have gotten the feeling that I did of, goddamn, they're going to go on and do some crazy ass shit. But even being here now, goddamn, this is some crazy ass shit. This album has got it all. It's got bops, it's got bangers, it's got jams, and it has luxury. One moment I'll be reclined, swaying my head back and forth with an imaginary cigarette in my hand to a loungy tune like Killing Time. Next thing I know, I'm out on the dance floor, shaking everything that my mother did give to me to a song like Image or Cry For Me. Next thing I know, I'll have my head bowed, nodding along to the infectious grooves of a song like Tonal Vision or That's My Floor. Match all this with the production that makes it sound like a real future pop album that you would expect from the 2020s, thanks in no small part to the actual drums and bass that are recorded for this record. And you'll have a record that you'll listen to in decades and it will still sound as fresh as the day it came out. I'm calling it with 5 years to go in this decade that by 2030, we will be considering this one of the best pop albums of the decade. Brad Summer? It's Mag Bay Millennium. What sound does a gizzard make? What sound does a lizard make? What sound does 6 Australian blokes adapting the sounds of American Southern rock, blues, and glam rock sound like? Well, this album probably only answers one of those questions, but it answers it in the most satisfying ways possible. At number 2, we're out here with the 26th album from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and you better believe this is one of my favorite albums of the year. I may be what one would call giz-pilled. I've been following the band since 2016. I own the records. I got lucky enough to see them live in Chicago in all of their glory. So, as one so obsessed, you'd think it natural to see their latest release near the top of my list. But let me hit you with a curveball, Slim. Their last album in this style, Fishing for Fishies, is one of my least favorite from the band. But this new record, Flight B741, is one of my favorite albums they've ever made. This is the happiest an album has made me in a while, and I mean that physically. Like, whenever I put this album on, I just have a smile plastered across my face the whole time, because this may be one of the most joyous records that you can listen to in the year of our Lord and Gizzard 2024. And it's not just the warm, inviting tones of a style of music that's synonymous with being warm and inviting, but this album oozes with the joy of the people making it. You can just tell by listening to this thing that this is made by a group of musicians who absolutely love what they're doing. King Gizzard, a band 26 albums and a decade and a half into their career, sound like they are operating on the same amount of passion and joy as a group of guys that just got together and realized how great it is to play music with other guys who also love and play music. There are no skips on this album because they made no skips on this album. This album grooves extremely hard because they wanted this album to groove extremely hard. Everybody sings on this album because they felt that every voice was needed to shout out from the mountaintops that King Gizzard is still out here making music that they love to make. And they're only getting better with every album. Now for the number 1 spot. In a year of so many fantastic releases from so many talented artists, how can one pick a favorite? I mean, just assembling this list has been so difficult because I'll give a re-listen to something I hadn't heard since February, and then I'll be like, you know what, this actually needs to have a spot on the list too. So how then? I'll tell you. Your favorite album of the year is the one that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when your favorite parts hit time and time again. Your favorite album can meet all your expectations, but still defies your expectations with all the surprises it has to unfold for you. Your favorite album is the one that you never have to consider, do I want to listen to this right now? Because as soon as a sequence of notes from it find the way into the playback of your mind, or you see the album art in your library, you don't think, you don't consider, you just hit play. And that spot for me this year can be filled by no other than Blood Incantation's Absolute Elsewhere. This band has been a juggernaut of modern death metal, but since their 2019 album, Hidden History of the Human Race, you could literally witness this band cooking in real time. An album that's entirely Berlin school style electronic music? Sure, here you go. An EP that's blending those flavors of electronic with tones of psychedelic death metal? Yeah, here you go. But even when you've been listening all along, you cannot prepare yourself for the 100% masterpiece that they've been waiting to drop on you all this time. And that package is delivered in Absolute Elsewhere. Kind of similar to what I said about the King Gizzard album, is this album is a symbol of a band that is honing their craft to make the music that they truly want to make. This album is such a perfect culmination of everything the band has been working up to and still defies expectation. Are you a metal purist? Listen to this album. Are you an outsider of the genre that can't stand a long-haired, bearded man growling at you for 40 minutes long? Listen to this album. Do you want to hear what the sound of pure creativity and making music for the love of music sounds like in 2024? Listen to this album, please. I mean, I've really enjoyed this band over the past few years, but I did not expect Blood Incantation to become one of my new favorite metal bands. I love this album so dearly, and I will continue until they drop their next album. So there you have it. That's it. That's my list, my favorite albums of 2024. I hope you enjoyed. Please leave in the comments whatever your favorite albums of the year, maybe ones you thought that I left out or were unfairly a little bit harsh to. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening here on George 99.9.